My name is Hugh Knight, and I'm the Fechtmeister of the Schlachtschule. Today we're going to talk about the Schielhau. Before we do that, however, I need to explain a concept that applies to pretty much all kinds of cutting, and that we're going to use to talk about the Schielhau and how to execute it correctly. But I want to put it in its generic form first, and that is that many people that I see cutting on YouTube videos, things like that, have a tendency to lead with their hands instead of with the point of the sword. When you cut properly, you need to lead with the point of the sword, not with the hands. If you don't, what you're really doing is moving a part of you out into your opponent's reach before you're threatening him. If instead I lead with the point, then I am forcing him to displace my attack rather than attacking me before any part of my person gets into his range. Okay, so that's what I mean when I talk about leading with the point instead of leading with the hands. Now this is especially important with the Schielhau, as you'll see in a minute, because it tends to cause a bad habit. The Schielhau in its basic form is nothing but an Oberhau done with the short edge. So, as I cut my opponent, I'm simply swinging out to the side and cutting back in at an angle. As with every cut in the Kunstfechten, this has very little to do with swinging the arms and a lot to do with the motion of my hands, push-pull action, pulling down with my right hand and pushing up with my left to create a forceful impact on his shoulder, which is the target we're primarily told to aim for. So, as my opponent attacks me, straight down in I come. Okay? Normally when you do this at full speed, it just bounces off to the side. In any case, all I'm doing is executing the cut while sort of ignoring him and pretending it's not even happening. So he cuts, and I cut. Okay? I'm not actively blocking his sword. And there's an important reason for that. If I start by blocking his sword, now who's in charge of the bind here? Sure, I can cut straight down, but all he has to do is pick up his hands to stop that, right, and do something else to me. Okay? No one is in charge of that bind. Nobody owns it. So I need to execute a technique that hits and displaces in one action, one motion. Straight down in. Well, not straight in an angle, but straight in without bothering to try and stop his attack. Now, the way to prevent that is by leading with your point, not with your hands. So many times when I see videos of this, I see people doing this. And the reason they're doing that is because instead of pushing the sword out like this and flipping it over, they're pushing their hands out like this, and then they have to sweep across to do the actual displacement. A, that creates an empty displacement, and B, it gives him a moment in which to react. Okay? It isn't a single-time technique. The way we teach this in our class is to break it down into discrete motions. One, stick your hands out. And as you can see, my point is a little off vertical. It's a little bit forward. It's not here, it's not here, it's not here, and it's not extreme either. Just a little bit. Then as I step, I pick my hands up and pull back in with my right hand as I push up with my left hand to execute the cut. One last time, here's what it looks like. Okay? Notice the angle of my hands. Done correctly, his sword will either bounce off and fly out, which happens more often at full power, or it'll catch on my cross. Don't be here, right? Be there, so you have that angle to catch the sword coming in.